Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have a fighter showcase for Yoel Romero, as it was requested by Afro Kiddo in my comments of the last video, which was the CM Punk video. And like I said before, I've been saying in a couple of my recent videos, if there is a fighter you'd like me to use, or if you want me to play a particular way, or even fight you in general, just let me know in the comments, and I'm sure I'll get around to it. It might take obviously a week or a bit for the video to come out, but if you guys comment and I see, I will get to recording that video. So like I said, Afro Kiddo wanted me to use Yoel Romero, so that's who we're going to be using today. And I haven't used him much this game. I think I used him in season 1 and 2, which was when I was still really trying to get to grips with the game. I wasn't great in season 1 and 2. It's only these latest seasons that I've started to reach like Division 20 and so on. And in the division now, obviously, this division's quite... You're going to come up against the same fighters over and over, obviously. If you're fighting against a grappler, it's going to be Jacare Souza. If you're fighting against the striker, obviously Izzy. But primarily, if you want someone that mixes up, you're going to be fighting against Robert Whittaker. He's just so good on this game. And obviously, this might be one of the last times we can actually use Yoel Romero, because obviously the next UFC that eventually comes out in however many years, it won't have him on the game, as he's now signed to obviously Bellator, so he's no longer a UFC fighter, which is a shame, especially considering how obviously I think his last fight was against Izzy, wasn't it? The awful performance. He was just like a statue. But yeah, going into this fight, we're facing a created fighter, and it's a 5-round fight, and this was my first fight in absolutely ages. I don't think I touched the game for a couple of weeks, and then I saw that comment asking me to use Yoel, and it just motivated me to obviously come on. And this was the first fight with me using Yoel. And with Yoel, obviously he's very, very explosive, right? Just like he is in real life. He's got absolutely phenomenal wrestling, because obviously he was I think he was an Olympic level wrestler for Cuba. And you really want to look to utilize the wrestling, because you know that's his bread and butter, ground the pound. But the one thing that annoys me about Yoel, to be honest, is how his submissions, they're very, very low. I believe, if I'm correct, he has 84 submissions, and obviously I'm someone that likes to submit my opponent, so it's not ideal. So when using him, you have to bear in mind that you're not going to be able to constantly pull off submission finishes. If that's your go-to, you're probably better off, you know, using someone like Jacare. But if you're more of a ground and pound type fighter, then he's going to suit you. And as you can see, one thing my opponent's doing now, which isn't the smartest thing to do, is he's obviously backing up against the fence. So if I really wanted to, I can consistently clinch spam, clinch spam, clinch spam, and look to get my opponent to the ground that way. But it's early on in it's midway through at the moment of the first round, and like I say, I don't really look to do much in the first round. I'm okay with giving it up, because I just want to see how my opponent is going to fight. I want to feed off these little bits of information he's giving me. And at the moment, you can see my opponent's more than comfortable with sitting back against the cage. I'm not really bothered about controlling the centre of the octagon. One thing with Yoel, obviously, of course, he has tremendous power, but the speed isn't the greatest. You don't really want to get into these boxing combinations, and I'm fighting a created fighter that wants to look to box, so that's why you can see I'm being very cautious with how and when I throw, and I'm thinking about countering my opponent's strikes. Obviously, here and there I'll explode if I need to, because obviously that's what Yoel does. And as you can see, I'm trying to work in these takedowns slowly, and I'm trying to get a good gauge of how good my opponent's takedown defense is. And if you remember earlier on in the round, I noticed that my opponent, if I clinch him against the fence, I can get the back quite easy and drag my opponent down to back sitting, which is something that a lot of people struggle defending. And as you can see, I'm really working in these leg kicks. Obviously, Yoel here and there throws a oblique kick, but on the game, they're not the most effective kick. They've got a good animation to them, but I just don't think they're super effective, so I tend not to use them. And my opponent is throwing that 1-2 and then the head kick, which worked a couple of patches ago. That was really annoying. And if you look, if you see how patient I'm being, I'm just trying to preserve the stamina, because Yoel's stamina, I find when I use him, goes down quite quickly. And as you can see, my opponent's leg's already in some damage, and it's only round 1, and I've done a good job working that lead leg of my opponent. So I have a look at the stats here. And this round will definitely go to my opponents, which, you know, I'm fine with, because it's the first round. I'm not too keen on having to like go out there and win that round. I can afford to lose this round because I've got 4 more to work with, and I've made the necessary reads, I think, from that round. So obviously I can see that my opponent has a difficulty with back sitting. So if I clinch my opponent, work to back sitting, my opponent also has difficulty checking leg kicks. And that's the 2 main things I got from that round. As you can see, my stamina's in quite a good position, and when I use Yoel, like I said earlier, I find that the stamina goes quite quickly, which is why I'm being a lot more patient. And I feel that, I think, as I said, this was my first time playing in ages, and the game felt so different to me because it's my first time playing after that, the patch. It felt really stiff. And now you can see my opponent, he's not touching me too much, so he's trying to throw this overhand. I'm expecting a head kick soon, and look, backing up, and he's against the cage once again, and I'm just working that lead leg. And you see I'm going in and out of range. I'm not throwing too many strikes because I don't want to get caught. Obviously my my opponent's created fire is a boxer. I have to bear that in mind, that boxing exchanges, 9 times out of 10 my opponent will have the upper hand, and that's why I'm being so attentive, so patient. If you are looking to use Yoel Romero, he has some 5-star moves, I think, and he has that the flying knee, which is very good. And as you can see here, my opponent used all the stamina, so I shot for the spear takedown. And this is where you want to be. This is a great position here, and I always pre-deny to my left with the analog, so my opponent can't just turn around and get to sprawl. I'm more than comfortable with my opponent getting me to half guard, because from here I can still implement damage. And here I'm just going to look to drain my opponent's stamina, because right now, just basing it off the things I'm seeing throughout the fight, I can see that my opponent's having issues managing stamina, because every once in a while after a big strike, it will flash in the corner to show that he doesn't have much stamina. And I know that his stamina's slowly draining. So you can see I'm softening up the body here. I'm faking transitions. I'm going to half guard. But my opponent done a good job blocking the strike there. And this is the stuff you need to notice in your fight. So when I went to posture up there, my opponent denied using his left arm, I believe. And now I know that if I posture up again, my opponent will probably deny with the left arm. And my opponent's doing a good job here of not letting me get to side control, which is exactly where I want to be, because I feel like you can implement more damage that way. And I'm just being very cautious. I'm moving when I have to, I'm faking, but this is all just to run down the clock and do small increments of damage. I'm not looking to throw anything big. As you can see, I've got a minute left now, and if I see out this round in this position, rack up the control time, my opponent's not doing much, not trying to get up. So as long as I do this, I'll win this round for sure, which makes it 1 round each. And this round here is a good indicator of how the next round could go. I've had good success controlling my opponent here, and as you can see, like I said earlier, I made the mental note that my opponent blocks with the left hand when I posture up, so I threw a straight because I wasn't worried that my opponent was going to move their head, and I managed to let off a bit of damage. And this is how you really want to use Yoel Romero. I mean, you don't really want to be striking too much with him. Obviously he has that power which you can look to utilise, but often not, you're coming up against a striker, you're going to be at the speed disadvantage. Reach wise, his reach isn't the best. You have to be very patient. You can't constantly explode because your stamina's going to go down. So I'd fight a similar fight to what I'm doing now. If it's obviously against a striker, you're going to be patient, choose and look for your openings. Don't constantly spam takedowns, because if your opponent's good, you're just going to get denied and your stamina's going to completely deplete. And yeah, I'd look to just fight like this, rack up little bits of damage. His leg kicks are really effective, and obviously Yoel Romero has that flying knee, which you can look to utilise. And throw big strikes every now and then. Don't throw them constantly. As you can see, my stamina going into round 3 is in a very, very good position now. I know my opponent's isn't the same. And as you can see, my opponent's using a lot of movement, trying to come in and out and getting against the cage. And I'm not biting on anything. As you can see, I'm very relaxed. I went for a roundhouse to the body there, and he caught me, and as you can see, the stamina bang flashed. And I'm constantly working that lead leg, using my movement to stay away from the fence. I'm really controlling the centre of the octagon, and I'm looking to land a big strike. It's round 3, I've done the damage I need to. And as you can see, this is where patience is very key. I'm making my opponent come to me, even though my opponent I think has the reach advantage. And you see, I land a head kick there, work the body, flying knee, get the knockdown, and that was beautiful. It's a shame the fight didn't finish there, but yeah, that flying knee was very, very, very well timed, and it all came off the back. Obviously, I haven't used that flying knee, so my opponent didn't expect it. Landed a big head kick, went to the body, then went to the head. Often or not, if you rock the head, people just constantly go for the body, and it gets predictable. You know, if you head kick someone and then go to the body like once or twice, if I throw an uppercut in there, now you're in danger, you'll get rocked. And so we take my opponent's back, we get the deny here. He done it twice, which I didn't expect. Had I denied that transition, my opponent would be in big trouble. But this is an ideal position for Yoel. I deny that by holding R2 and flicking the whatever arm my opponent moved. We posture up here and we're looking to do some damage. I mean, this is the worst position to be in with Romero, just because how hard he hits. And as you can see, my opponent's stamina there is not great. I was hoping to get that deny off and then go for a submission, even though his submissions aren't the best. But my opponent done just enough to, you know, survive. And as you can see, my opponent denied with the exact same hand he denied last round with. So when I postured up, he used the left arm again. And it's the small things, the small signs like this that really start to add up. And I also noticed here that my opponent was throwing strikes using the right arm, which is the arm that would be using to grab my head. So when your opponent does that, if you flick up on the analog, you'll just posture up. And as you can see here, I'm getting off the denies that I need to and finally getting to the crucifix. And I was waiting for my opponent's transition, but we didn't get off the deny. And as you can see, my opponent here is just in survival mode. He's taking damage, obviously, not to the extent that he's about to get finished, but he's taken a lot of damage this round. We've got the knockdown, and then we've got the back. We've got his back, and we land some good strikes. And this is a perfect round. This is exactly how I wanted the round to go. I didn't take much damage, and I'm inflicting a lot of it. Very good round. So round 1 was my opponent's. Round 2 I'd say was mine, and round 3 I'd say was mine. And in this round, it's quite evident that if it goes the way it's been going, that I could potentially get a finish here. So right now I'm in a position where I can either see out this next round, get a win, take down my opponent, just control him, and I'm up to 3 rounds to 1, and my opponent needs to come out all guns blazing. Or I can look for the finish myself. And the one thing people do online, which often ends up getting them knocked out, is they deviate from their game plans. And if you're having success with a particular game plan, don't deviate from it just because you think you could finish your opponent, because the likelihood is if that opponent's a good fighter, they might realise and register that you're trying to get the finish, and they'll end up getting the finish, and you'll end up kicking yourself thinking, wow, why did I deviate from the game plan? So for instance, the game plan here against this opponent was I'm throwing that leg kick to the lead leg because my opponent isn't doing a good job checking it, working in takedowns when I can, and I want to stay out of range. Occasionally throw a big strike, but ideally it's stamina management here. And as you can see, my stamina for the 4th round's in a very, very good position, and I'm getting these rocks now. I get a drop here, look to take down my opponent, but my opponent does a good job of denying. And right now I'm in control of this fight, and like I'm saying, I'm not deviating from the game plan. I'm staying calm, I'm staying relaxed, because I know I'm going to win this round. Come out next round, my opponent's going to have to do something special in order to win the fight. And as you can see, I'm trying to go for these the flying knee, because obviously I landed one last round and it was well timed. But my opponent's now denying them because he knows I've got to do them. And when my opponent goes to throw the knee to my midsection, I'm swaying to the left or right just to avoid the knee. And you see I'm really starting to pile on the pressure here, but instead of getting trigger happy, I back up, look for another opportunity. It's like I'm allowing my opponent to reset without allowing him to reset. I'm just giving him that little break. And here my opponent gets off the deny and I get up, which I could have looked to stay in that position and obviously just look to posture up again and potentially finish the fight. But where I'm having success on the feet, I chose to get back up. I know it's only a matter of time before I get another knockdown and potentially finish my opponent. And my opponent's biggest flaw here is that my opponent's obviously wasted a lot of stamina, hasn't done too much damage, and is constantly backing up towards the cage. And that's things you can't do, because especially against a grappler, there's so many ways off the cage I can work the fight to the ground. and if I really just wanted to be grapple heavy consistently, I could do this. Ideally, my opponent would want to be controlling the center of the octagon using the range, but my opponent wasn't the most patient fighter. Although he had the reach advantage, it seems, my opponent was constantly coming towards me. And as you can see, look, went for that knee, we sway to the left, and then we use the right hook to drop my opponent. Opponents get the cage. We take my opponent's back. And from here, I know he's going to go backside, and here I can posture up. And as long as I land some good hits, it will be enough to finish the fight. And as you can see, it was enough to get my opponent out of there via ground and pound. So yeah, that's the Yoel Romero showcase. I did get a couple of other fights after this, but they just weren't to this level. A lot of people just rage quit, or it was a submission victory, or something along the lines that wasn't too realistic. I mean, this is exactly how you'd want to use it online, so I thought this gameplay was very reminiscent of how others should use it. So yeah, we went to the 4th round. It was a good fight. Obviously, we lost the first, but we made the necessary adjustments. And like I say, I don't mind losing the first round, because that's where you really learn how you're gonna install your game plan, how you're gonna implement it in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The fight statistics will be on screen now. As you can see, 6 minutes 39 control time across 4 rounds, which is okay. That's a decent amount of control. And then yeah, so 29-28 overall. That's the video for today. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.